Who's your emergency contact? Who should be notified in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. Today I want to share with you about these different organizations or different gangs within the prison. Most of them have a pretty good solid line of communication. I shared with you a few weeks back when I first got back out of the county jail about this dude named Pac-Man that I ran into, Aaron. He's not from SAC, but he's from Utah. But he had punished this skinhead dude named Dave in the block, trying to tell Aaron that he couldn't tattoo on other races. But at the same time, Dave ran a store and he was my store man. Anything I needed in the store, he hooked me up. So I was kind of sad that he left because I had the hookup, the inside track on whatever it is that I needed to get from commissary. But Dave's affiliated with a gang called BBS. And the homie Aaron, even though he's not a SAC member, he's from Utah, and the SAC homie's back his play. Well, after that incident, when they went to the shoe, there was two different things that I was told as far as why the shit happened the way it happened. One was that while Aaron was in the shoe, some of the BBS members went to SIS and told that SIS that if they let Aaron back out, but don't let Dave and LB back out, because LB was Dave's cellie. If they didn't let them two back out, then they were going to punish Aaron. Now, before this, they've already been in the shoe for, a pretty substantial amount of time already. But they had another SAC member that hit the yard. I thought he was from Utah because I seen SAC on his, on the back of his head. So I thought he was the homie from Utah, but it turned out he was from Indiana. And, through the since the SAC has been hitting the feds, they've been recruiting members from all across the country. I speak on my episode about SAC often because, they're the homies out here from Utah. I know the people that started the organization back when we were just all 18, 19 years old, going into the county jail back in 95. And a lot of them that went out to the state joint, they used to be bloods out here in the streets, but when they went out to the state joint, they were on blood time. But, I always repeat that if you're not really from a blood gang out of California, the blacks that are bloods or Crips really don't accept you as their equal. And they were sending the homies on missions. And the homies got tired of that shit. They're like, man, fuck this shit. And they started their own, neo-Nazi gang. But regardless of how you feel, how they started it, or how it all ended up, at the end of the day, these dudes went hard and they put in their work. And they've been putting work throughout the feds and every penitentiary they've been to. And they've been beefing with, already known, recognized skinhead gangs and neo-Nazi gangs. But through the course of the last 20+ years that I've been in the feds, they made a name for themselves. And from every account, when I hear back from people in the penitentiary, they're spreading across the United States as far as the penitentiaries is concerned, recruiting people from all over the country. So I met a few dudes that were from Texas, from Iowa, and this particular dude, he's from Indiana. Now at this time, they had closed down my block, DA, and made it into an honor unit. And I shared with you that only lasted about a month because soon as they kicked us out and made it an honorary unit, honor unit with the inmates in there being able to have single cells and stuff and other privileges. They had 2 cases of people committing suicide. So when that happened, they closed the honor unit down and turned it back into a normal unit and started bringing people back that had left the unit. They had kicked out of the unit, me included. But before I came back into DA, I was put in EA. And in EA, that's where I was with the dude from SAC that was from Indiana. He lived like 2 cells down from me on the 2nd tier. And he was letting me know that there was some brewing with the BBS, because he had owed me some money. Not anything, serious or anything, but he was just giving me heads up like, hey, something might happen. I might go to the SHU for a minute, this and that. Well, the story that was run down for me by two different SAC members was, one was what I just mentioned, that when they were deciding to see who they let back out on the compound, I guess some of the BBS members went to SIS and told them that they had to let all 3 of them back out. If they just let Aaron out, then they're going to punish Aaron. Talking to the SIS is a no-no anyway. So especially if word gets back that you're threatening somebody else, that's affiliated with another gang, the other members of that organization, that gang, is not going to really let that slide. Now, the other version was that in the Smooth in Lewisburg at this time, that the SAC dudes and the BBS dude had got into it or had an exchange of words, and as far as whatever happened with them, it wasn't resolved. But the SAC dudes, they have a pretty good line of communication. I don't know the intricacies of their network or anything like that. I'm not here to speak on that. And you would assume that the BBS, them being a neo-Nazi skinhead gang, would have the same kind of network to communicate. But it turned out, when that dude came from Lewisburg, he came back and passed the word that, hey, we got a green light on this BBS. But the BBS that was on the compound didn't have a clue. On this particular day, I'm out at the sweat lodge with the native bros. Every now and then I go out there and sweat with them, or if I just go to the sweat lodge, I just might help with the rocks or with the other stuff, because, in my experience, sweating is not something I look forward to. When the natives sweat, unbeknownst to me from when the first time I went into the sweat, was that they're remembering the suffering of their people, all the histories and all that stuff. So when you're in the sweat, it's almost torture. And it depends on who's running the sweat, how much rocks they put in and how fast. The rocks are burned for hours until it's freaking super hot. And then they bring the rocks into the teepee, into the sweat lodge, and you close it up where it's not airtight, but it's pitch black. You have those tents and blankets, those I forgot what they're called, but anyway, a bunch of blankets that's put over the thing to seal it so that no smoke, no heat escapes it. And the first time I freaking went in there, man, I thought my skin was gonna burn off my face. I was on like the verge of tapping out, but I didn't want to look bad. Like, I was like, man, I guess I'm just gonna have to die in here, because I don't want to disrespect their ceremony by tapping out and crying about opening up the door, opening up the flap or whatever. But if you've never sweat before, it's not very comfortable. But there's some native bros in there that they love that stuff, and they're in there cooking. For me, I don't have a high pain tolerance when it comes to like self-inflicting pain. I can get into a fight and my adrenaline would kick in and I might not feel what's going on with me. I've been stabbed, I've been jumped, but just sitting there, feeling that hot steam hit your body and stuff, it's self-inflicting, and it's just, I don't have a very comfortable time. But there's been incidents where, I went to the sweat lodge for a reason, to send my prayers up to the sky for like family members that are out here that were sick and stuff. And during those times, I think I was able to do the sweat in the right frame of mind. And I was able to set aside, the physical pain that I was going through from having my skin burning, feeling like it was going to peel off. If you never sweat before, it's a profound experience, especially if you're in there doing it for the right reason. So every now and then, I get invited out there to the sweat, because in Florence, it wasn't like how we were in Atwater, where we were really tight with the native bros. Mainly, I knew a lot of the native bros that was already in Florence from other places, so I still had a rapport and relationship with them. But also there's like Mexicans that are from the TS and from the Texas MA that would go and sweat. And when one of them or some that would go and sweat to celebrate whatever or have some type of thing going on, they would come and invite me to come and sweat with them. And when I'm invited, I show up out of respect and out of the love that I have for these individual men that I've been having relationships throughout the years. So I was in the sweat lodge. On this particular day, I wasn't sweating. But while I'm sweating, or while I'm at the sweat lodge, because I wasn't sweating, a couple of the bros came up to me, a couple of native homies came up to the fence, and they're like, "Damn, you see that?" I say, "So what?" I knew that there was something brewing with the SAC and the BBS, but I didn't know when they were going to make the move or how are they going to make the move. So it turned out like something had happened in Lewisburg, and the word got back when the dude from Indiana came to Florence. He brought back word that they had a green light to hit the BBS dudes. The BBS dudes that was on the compound in Florence, they were walking around clueless. And the SAC, got together and plotted and carried out the mission. And one of the BBS dude that was on the compound, he was from Oregon. And I know him when we was in Atwater, and I was cool with him. But like I said, when it's not my politic, I don't get involved. But I don't have a relationship with him as far as I'm going to jump in and intervene. Because I have rapports with other races and dudes from different gangs that I function with, and that I'm not going to let just sit around and get dope fiend and somebody bring them a move without giving them a heads up. But when I make that decision to involve myself, I'm saying that I'm going to involve myself to whatever extent it goes. Because once something leaves your mouth, you can't take it back. And once another person, regardless how much you trust them, knows your intention and has heard what you said, there's no guarantee that it's going to be confined to just you two. Because once that is out in the air, regardless whose ears you're whispering it into, there's a potential that it might reach somebody that might not like what was said. So before I intervene in incidents involving other races or other gang, I have to determine if I'm going to carry it through to wherever it goes. Once I speak on something, I'm going to stand on it. And if I'm not going to, I'm on my fucking business. And this incident, like I said, I knew that dude from BBS, but we didn't have a rapport that I'm going to ride with him or he's going to ride with me. We were just cordial. We knew each other, and he played on my softball team, but that was the extent of the relationship. I didn't see the incident. I'm in the sweat lodge, but I guess after the incident, a couple of the native bros that was on the walk that saw it came and told us at the sweat lodge about it, because they were like, hey man, we're about to get locked down. I was like, what happened? He goes, man, the SAC just hit the BBS dude. And this one BBS dude that I'm speaking of, I forget his name, but they had caught him on the walk. When you go in the wreck in Florence, we're on a mountain. So all the yard and stuff is all hilly. Like on the first yard, it's maybe flat, but as you get to the middle yard, it gets higher in elevation. And on the first yard, you have the track, but then you have a staircase that leads into the indoor rec. So getting to the first yard, there's a ramp that goes up to the yard for the handicapped people. So I guess over there by the ramp, there's a ditch. Where all the water drains when it rains and snow and stuff. And I guess they had two SAC dudes rolled up on him. He didn't have no idea what was going on. One of them hit him, dazed him. They pieced him up, knocked him out, and started stomping on his head, and then threw him in the gutter and walked off and got away with it. But getting away with it is not really getting away with it. They got away as far as nobody, none of the COs, none of the staff saw the incident. But once the incident happens, all they got to do is run the cameras back. Before I entered the feds, they didn't used to have cameras in the facilities. They didn't used to have cameras in the unit. They didn't used to have cameras in the yard. And a lot of people was able to get away with, with a lot of different things, even including, murking somebody. But now, if it doesn't happen inside a cell, that's the only place don't have no cameras, is inside your cell. Anywhere else on the compound, whether it's in the unit or the yard, is all covered by cameras. So of course they ran the cameras back, snatched up all the people that was involved. But at this time there was 3 BBS dudes, and they had hit them all in different spots wherever they caught them. I don't know if they caught one in education or it was in the block, but they caught that dude I'm talking about that got left in the gutter going up to wreck on the ramp. Now the reason I mention this is that when you're involved in a gang, you have to have a solid line of communication, because something that happens on one yard can easily spread to another yard. Because being a gang member, you swore to have each other's back. You swore to carry out whatever mission you're assigned to carry out or you're asked to carry out. And for these dudes that's on the yard, the BBS, they got caught slipping because they weren't communicating with their people the way that everybody else is. And like I said, some had happened over there in Lewisburg, and word came back that these dudes are beefing, but the dudes that were sitting on the yard, the BBS dudes, they had no clue and became a victim. The reason I mentioned this story is that, if you're part of a gang, you need to have a solid line of communication, because when something happens on one yard, it can easily spread out to another compound. And if you're not on your top of your game, you could be sitting ducks like these BBS dudes. Welcome to the USP.